This is Pulse of Africa, the face and voice of Africa. The story of resurgent and burgeoning Africa is here, only on the Pulse of Africa channel. Pulse of Africa, the face and voice of Africa.
Welcome to Pulse of Africa News. I'm From Namak. We cover inspiring stories and key moments shaping Africa. For the first news, President Cyril Ramaphosa of South Africa held a private meeting with Colonel Michael Randrianirina, President of Republic of Madagascar, during the latter's working visit to South Africa. The talks were held at Mahalamba Nodolofu, the President's official residence in Pretoria. South Africa and Madagascar established diplomatic relations in 1994 and have since expanded bilateral cooperation through agreements in air transport, merchant shipping, and science and technology. The two countries also collaborate closely within regional and continental framework, including the South African Development Community, SADC, and the African Union. During the engagement, South Africa expressed concern over recent political developments in Madagascar and called for calm and respect for democratic process. Pretoria reaffirmed its support for a peaceful resolution that upholds democracy, the rule of law, and sustainable development, according to the Presidency of the Republic of South Africa. The chairperson of the African Union Commission, Mahmoud Ali Yusuf, delivered a keynote address this morning at the preparatory working session for the high-level meeting on coherence, consolidation of the peace process in the Democratic Republic of the Congo and the Great Lakes region, held at the Congress Palace in Lomé, Togo. The session brought together the panel of facilitators, including former head of state, Togo's foreign minister, head of the East African Community, and the South African Development Community, alongside other regional and international partners. In his remarks, Chairperson Yusuf reaffirmed Africa's unwavering commitment to ending the crisis in Eastern DRC, praising the leadership of the President Faure Issoumezina Nzambe for accepting the African Union mediator mandate in the spirit of Pan-Africanism. He noted that despite multiple mediation efforts, violence continued in Goma, Bukavu, and Uvira, causing thousands of deaths and displacing hundreds of thousands of civilians. Yusuf emphasized that African-led initiatives must take priority, highlighting the principles of African solution to African problems. Yusuf underscored the need of a proactive and inclusive framework that fosters dialogue between the DRC, Rwanda, engaged neighboring countries, addresses the root cause of the conflict, safeguards the sovereignty of the DRC, responds to the legitimacy and security concerns of Rwanda and Uganda, and supports Burundi in managing the growing refugee burden. He also expressed gratitude to the United States and Qatar for supporting AU-led peace efforts. The chairperson concluded by emphasizing that Africa must demonstrate courage, unity, and collective responsibility in the pursuit of peace.
In Ethiopia, more homes and businesses now have access to electricity. Access to power supports education, healthcare, and local businesses. Light changes lives.
The African Group has called on UN member states to renew their commitment to multilateralism and deliver concrete outcomes for developing countries as the General Assembly resumed its 80th session. Delivering a statement on behalf of the African Group, Ambassador Matete Nena, permanent representative of the Lesotho to the United Nations and chair of the African Group for January, welcomed General Assembly President's priorities for the session and reaffirmed Africa's readiness for constructive engagement. Ambassador Nena aligned the African group with the Group of 77 in China, stressing that the session takes place at a critical juncture for multilateralism. He said the president's theme, Better Together, reflects Africa's long-held view that global challenges cannot be addressed in isolation, particularly as the United Nations marks its 80th anniversary. Highlighting Africa's pressing challenges, the ambassador pointed to the impacts of climate change, food insecurity, ongoing conflict, unsustainable debt, and limited access to health services and development and finances.
We meet at a time of unprecedented challenges. Conflicts ravage multiple regions, including our continent. The climate emergency intensifies. Poverty and inequality persists, threatening decades of development gains. In this context, Africa remains firmly committed to the United Nations and the purposes and principles enshrined in its charter. On peace and security, the Africa Group notes with concern that the continent continues to bear a disproportionate burden of conflict and humanitarian crisis. From the Sahel to the Horn of Africa, millions of our citizens suffer the consequences of instability. The group calls upon the Secretary General to intensify support for Africa-led peace initiatives and genuine partnership with the African Union and regional economic communities.
This, he noted, are worsened by growing global fragmentation, underscoring the need for genuine international cooperation, predictable financing, and respect for national development priorities. The African Group identified several key opportunities during the resume session, including the high-level meeting on HIV/AIDS scheduled for June 2026, calling for ambitious targets and sufficient resources to end the epidemic by 2030. It also underscored the existential importance of the high-level meeting on sea level rise, urging action-oriented outcomes on adaptations, loss, and damage in climate finance.
On sustainable development, the Africa Group is deeply concerned that with less than 5 years to the 2030 deadline, progress on the Sustainable Development Goals remains inadequate in Africa. The COVID-19 pandemic, climate impacts, rising debt levels, and geographical tensions have reversed development gains. We therefore call upon the Secretary General to ensure that the United Nations system prioritizes support for developing countries in accelerating progress towards the SDGs. The commitments made in the Seville Commitment must be translated into concrete actions, and the international financial architecture must be reformed to address unsustainable debt burdens and ensure adequate access to concessional financing for African countries. On climate change, Africa remains the most vulnerable continent to adverse climate impacts, despite contributing the least to global emissions. We call upon the Secretary General to continue advocating for ambitious climate action and adequate climate finance.
On global health, the group stressed that the high-level meeting on pandemic prevention, preparedness and response must strengthen health systems in developing countries and ensure equitable access to medical countermeasures. Ambassador Nena emphasized the importance of implementing the pact for the future, recalling Africa's long-standing demand for permanent representation on the UN Security Council, as outlined on the Swazilini Consensus and Sirte Declaration. He also called for reforms to the international financial architecture and measures to close the digital divide. On UN reform, the African Group cautioned that efficiency measures under the UN 80 initiative should not undermine mandates critical to development, pledging constructive engagement to protect African interests. The UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, is in Sudan to assess the humanitarian and human rights situation amidst the country's nearly 3-year-long conflict. During his visit, Turk acknowledged that the ongoing challenge faced by communities, but highlighted the effort of local organizations working to find solutions despite limited resources. The High Commissioner emphasized the importance of supporting these local initiatives and called for increased international assistance to address the urgent need of those affected by the prolonged crisis. Sudan has been embroiled in a protracted conflict for nearly 3 years. The conflict has led to widespread displacement, humanitarian crisis, and human rights violations affecting millions of people. Local organizations and civil society groups have been at the forefront of providing aid and seeking community-based solutions despite facing severe resource constraints. The international community includes the United Nations has repeatedly called for humanitarian access, conflict resolution and support for local initiatives to alleviate the suffering of Sudanese civilians. The visit by UN High Commissioner for Human Rights Volker Turk aims to assess the situation firsthand and strengthen global awareness and response to the crisis. Benin is set to raise as much as $1 billion from a sale of dollar-denominated sukuk bonds and other loan securities in what would be the first African sovereign debt offering this year, according to people familiar with the matter. The West African nation, which witnessed an unsuccessful coup attempt in December, plans to offer a $500 million 7-year sukuk, along with an equivalent amount via additional sales of its existing notes, maturing in 2038 and 2041, said one of the people. Another person familiar who asked not to be identified to discuss a private matter said the offer will likely take place on January 20, with the final amount decided by investor demand. Sukuk bonds are a type of security that complies with Islamic laws' prohibitions against interests. A finance ministry spokesman didn't immediately respond to requests for commitment. Benin this week hired banks including Citigroup's ENC and JP Morgan Chase and CO to market the offering. The country's $750 million of debt due in 2038 traded little change at a yield of 7.52% on Friday, according to Bloomberg. Moving on to sport news, the CAF Africa Cup of Nations Morocco 2025 has set a new scoring record, becoming the highest scoring edition in the tournament's history with 120 goals netted ahead of Sunday's final. The tally surpasses the previous mark of 102 goals recorded at the 2019 tournament in Egypt, highlighting the attack, intent, technical quality and growing confidence of teams across the continent. Africa's traditional powerhouses have been at the forefront of the scoring surge. Senegal, Nigeria, hosts Morocco and Cote d'Ivoire have all demonstrated attacking depth, while emerging talents have matched established stars in both influence and impact. Morocco's Brahim Diaz leads the scoring charts with 5 goals, making him one of the standout performers of the tournament. He is followed closely by Egypt's Mohamed Salah and Nigeria's Victor Osimhen, who had scored 4 goals each. With both players set to feature in the third-place playoff on Saturday, the race for the Golden Boot remains wide open. With 2 matches still to be played, the goal record could yet be extended, capping a tournament that has delivered sustained entertainment, drama, and high-quality football. The Confederation of African Football and Technical Supply, PUMA, have unveiled a special commemorative version of the Total Energy CAF Africa Cup of Nations Morocco 2025 official match ball, ITRI, for Sunday's showpiece final. Host Morocco will take on Senegal in the decider at the Stade Prince Moulay Abdellah, where one will be crowned the new champion of Africa. They will play with a special edition of the official match ball, featuring golden accents as a tribute to the 2 finalist teams. The ball that has been used during the Total Energy CAF African Morocco 2025 features a striking design that incorporates traditional Moroccan zelig geometric patterns characterized by central star geometry, floral petal outlines, and circular symmetry. Built on Puma's advanced Orbital 6 technology, the ball seamlessly blends heritage with innovation, delivering the performance standards required for elite-level competition while celebrating African culture. That's all for this hour, and thank you for tuning in. Goodbye.